Olá, buenos días a todos, gracias por venir. Estoy aquí con mi amigo Simone Mora y para nosotros es un placer porque tenemos esa colaboración con IPN. Imagino que este sea el primero de los encuentros que haremos juntos, tanto aquí en México, pero también al MIT. Yo voy a cambiar al inglés porque imagino que la traducción de mi portuñol hace cosas interesantes aquí, entonces es mejor que switch it to English. Okay, so I will give you a brief presentation about what we do at Sensible City Lab. And we are there at MIT, and this is a beautiful day, not as today, which is already very cold, but we're welcome to visit. It's a very nice campus, and what's interesting there is that we have people not only from all over the world, but also from different disciplines, and we meet together all the time doing collaborative work. So I think this is a lesson that we learn very quickly when we start working at MIT, that you are taking classes. For instance, I'll give you an example. Most of the students at MIT, they are either taking as a major some sort of engineering or computer science. However, they can take also a minor, which means, okay, they have a smaller degree. We have the major degree, you're doing civil engineering, and you can do another course. And the most popular course is music. So for me, it's quite interesting to see that so many engineers, they come to MIT, and they leave MIT with 2 degrees, and one of them is very hard science, but the other one is on arts. And this is somehow the spirit of MIT. At the lab, on the other hand, we are a smaller unit, but we also try to keep this diversity. So you don't need to read anything here, but on the line you have several projects. And along the arc, we have people working in different projects. And we also come from different backgrounds. So my background is in urban planning, and Simone, for instance, who will speak after me, is in computer science. And we always work together with our colleagues from mathematics and economics and design. And why we focus on cities? Because cities occupy only 3% of the Earth's crust. However, cities are responsible for 70% of energy consumption and 75% of CO2-related emissions. So whatever you hear about climate change, if we don't do something for cities, we're not doing the right thing. In the Sensible City Lab, we try to bridge this gap between what happens in the physical city and what happens in the digital layer that is all around us, right? And for doing that, if my pointer works, yes, and to do that, we also have one aspect of our project which is very hands-on. So we go there, we build sensors, we build boats, and we deploy them in cities, as we did here with our colleagues from IPN in Mexico City. And the lab is expanding. So these are all the cities where we have projects, we have collaborated with these cities, and the black dots are where we have current labs. So we are creating a new one in Singapore, which starts in January. The one that's missing here is Dubai. We opened Dubai in the middle of this year, and we have one in Stockholm and another one in Amsterdam. And for this, it's quite nice to have this global knowledge of what cities are doing all over the world. But also, we have some very nice data visualizations that I will show you, and why data visualization is important, and design in general. Because most of the time, when we're reading a scientific paper, unless you know the field, these papers are really boring. So the language is difficult, they are not well written, and sometimes you have so many equations there that nobody can grasp. But then the challenge is how to translate these papers to everybody, so that anybody can understand at least overall what we're talking about. So imagine that if you have the challenge, whoever here has posters here in the poster session. Okay, we are going there now, and all of us, we are in a scientific congress, we are somehow interested in the same topics, so we can understand what we're showing there. But think that you need to do the same thing, you have to present your poster in 2 minutes in a bar, and make this an exciting story. So I think this is the challenge that we try to face with larger problems. And communication in science is really critical if you want to make science important to the world. And we have been quite successful. So besides the high quality publications that we have been also being displayed on the cover of some very important magazines, such as Nature. And I think this calls the attention that not only the science is important, but also how you make the communication of the science appealing to the general public. Okay, but now I will show you 4 projects. And I will start with one project. And the sequence will be the following. I will start with something that's very tangible, that we use in everyday life, to something very ethereal, that we cannot touch, but is everywhere. The first project, called Bike Trafficking, we start from the following problem. We were visiting Amsterdam frequently, so we have, as I mentioned, we have this lab in Amsterdam, called Sensible Amsterdam Lab, and even for us, coming from Boston, which is a pretty bike-friendly city, we could see bikes everywhere in Amsterdam. And this is pretty nice. However, we also found that in Amsterdam, about 5,000 bikes are fished out of Amsterdam canals every year. 5,000 bikes. Some cities in the United States, they don't even have 5,000 bikers. So to know that they are taking out of the canals 5,000 bikes, we said, okay, oh my God, how many bikes do they have? And what happened with these bikes? And then we went and we talked to the police. I said, okay, look, besides the bikes that you were fishing out of the canals, what about the other bikes? Do they steal bikes here? What does it happen? And then they told us, the police force said, okay, actually, we have more or less 80,000 bikes stolen every year in Amsterdam. So we asked, okay, where do they go? They said, we don't know. So what we decided to do? We said, okay, so let's find a way to track these bikes, to see what happened with the bikes when they are stolen. So what we did, we decided to put some trackers in each of these bikes. So we got 100 bikes from the cities. They gave us these bikes, and we put a tracker in each of these bikes, and we deployed these bikes. Oh, can you turn off these lights here? Can you stop this? Okay. Okay. I need these lights off. This one as well. They don't need to see me. Okay. Ooh, better. Okay. Now going back. Now you're gonna see. So we said, okay, where do they go? We collect 100 bikes. We put a tracker in each of these bikes, and we simply deploy these bikes around the city in points that we knew people were stealing more bikes. And this is what happened. Is it still pretty light? Can you see anything here? Yeah. I think if we could turn off that row as well. So what we found is that after a few days, the bikes were stolen. And actually, after 5 months, 70 of the 100 bikes had been stolen. So imagine that we put 100 bikes around the city, we put a tracker, and we locked the bikes. We locked the bikes, and still 70 were stolen. And what we found is that actually the bikes, they remain in Amsterdam. They never leave the city. And astonishingly, what we found also is once somebody steals a bike, they go somewhere, and then whoever bought the bike, the stolen bike, they start cycling in the same area where this bike was stolen. So the police did not know, and this research helped a lot the city to map what was happening with bike theft in Amsterdam. Okay, but in this case, we had one sensor, one tracker, connected to the internet, and with a GPS that we could follow this around, right? However, sometimes we don't realize that almost everything that we do in our lives, they leave some sort of digital traces. And we said, okay, let's see if we can find what happens with something that we consume in our daily lives that don't have any digital component in itself, but we still can see, can understand society through them. And let me tell you what we tracked. We tracked Coca-Cola. So how does it happen? So at some point, Coca-Cola came to us, and they had seen some of our research, our data visualization, and said, okay, look, we have this huge amount of data from Coca-Cola. What can we do about that? And which data was that? Probably you know one machine called Freestyle, the one that you go to a bar, and then you have Coca-Cola, Fanta, Sprite, everything, and then you can miss whatever you want. And we said, okay, this is a precious data, give us this data, and we try to find things about American society only through Coca-Cola consumption. And this is what we did. As you can see, first, we were just mapping each dispenser, how much Coca-Cola, Fanta, etc. was consumed, right? This was in itself quite nice, so knowing which day of the week they were consumed, so spring break, Easter, Dia de los Muertos. So when we found Dia de los Muertos spikes of Coca-Cola, say, oh, there are some Mexican communities around. So we start revealing cultural and social aspects of US society only based on Coca-Cola consumption. But also, at some point, we decide to see how they vary regionally and even locally. And we found in New York, this shop here is where we have more Coca-Cola consumed on a daily basis. And why is that? Because this region, they had a kind of a real estate boom with high rising, growing very fast. So everybody, all the employers, they were eating there in this cheap restaurant. But also we found that in some areas, probably here it would happen the same, we have some Coca-Cola consumption in the middle of the night. And why? Because in college towns in the United States, the students, they stay late, they work during the nights, and then around 2 or 3 p.m. is where they leave to eat something. So we also found we could identify college towns in the United States only based on Coca-Cola consumption. So what I like about this project is that even with things that we don't realize, that we're generating data, so every time that you go to a shop and order a coffee on a Starbucks, or instead of a coffee, you order a latte, everything that we consume generates data. And then if we do a good data analysis of this data, we can identify some social and economic and cultural behaviors about this city. And then finally, in these 3 first projects, I would like to show one that does not generate any tangible product, but still has been changing our lives for the past 20 years. Now it's pretty common, but when we did this work, it was really amazing. And what was that? We said, okay, look, we are with our cell phones, smartphones, all the time. And every time, and regardless what you send, if you're sending a love message or you're talking to your parents, we don't care. But only collecting the metadata means that, okay, are you using social media? Are you sending messages? Are you calling? Are you using WhatsApp? Are you watching videos? What? Let's see. Let's try. If the video does not work, then we turn off the lights again. What we decide to do is, okay, let's see if we, by doing the analysis of this metadata, we could find some global patterns. And this is what we had. We collect metadata from smartphones used all over the world and simply decide to see what people were using. We never saw the content of anything. We don't need to. And then very soon, we decided to see how these different activities were happening in different times of the day. And then, at some point also, in different countries, as you're going to see. And so this represents almost kind of a 24-hour data flow throughout the world, throughout different countries and throughout different cultures. So this is what we call the signature of humanity. We can understand humanity through the data that we all use and share. But if we're talking about data, something that always happened and people used to ask us more, was about privacy. So what happens when you collect all this data, regardless if you're simply collecting Coca-Cola data, so I know who consumes more or less Coca-Cola, or if I'm putting trackers on bicycles, or in the last case, if I'm collecting social media data. So we know what's happening there. So what about privacy? We decide to measure the trade-offs between the benefits and the privacy concerns of data-driven solutions for cities, right? And how we did that. So usually, I would come here and say, okay, look, let's have a poll. How many of you think that putting trackers on bikes have more benefits than privacy invasiveness? And then you raise your hands and we would count, fine. This is a problem, we think, because we are giving you a solution and only asking you your opinion. We thought, what if instead of doing that, we simply let people come up with some ideas and they would assess their own privacy and benefits trade-offs. And we designed this game called Data is Lots. And we had these games played also here in Mexico City. And we had this game so far, so we have this game translated in 12 languages, including Spanish. We have this game played already in person in 15 countries. And the idea is that by giving people these data cards, and together they would come up with ideas, they would present their ideas to others, they would try to pitch their idea. And then everybody else would start rating the privacy invasiveness or the benefits of these ideas. We would come up with a bottom-up approach to the trade-off between privacy and benefits of data-driven solutions. And we launched an online version, which has been played more than 1,500 times. So we're pretty happy with the outcome, and we are now writing a paper about these trade-offs, right? But I will close my talk with a flagship project of the lab. Because so far, as you can see, we have all these pieces. On the one hand, we're developing trackers. On the other hand, we're analyzing social media. We're doing some conceptual work. But what about putting all of these aspects together in one big project? And this is what we did for Amsterdam when we started working with them in 2016. Amsterdam came to the lab and said, okay, look, they knew that we had been working with autonomous driving in Singapore. because as I mentioned, as I show you, we used to have a lab in Singapore, which we are reopening now in January, and we were working at that time with self-driving cars. So Amsterdam came and said, okay, look, self-driving cars will come sooner or later, and we would like to be prepared for that. What MIT could do. So we went there and said, okay, look, why Amsterdam would invest any money on self-driving cars if the city has so many bikes, 80,000 of them stolen per year or more, but also Amsterdam has more than 100 kilometers of canals. So why would Amsterdam put any attention to self-driving cars? Why not explore what the city has, such as canals? So why don't we design self-driving boats for the city? And the city said, oh, that's cool, let's do that. So we started doing the research. But when we went there, this is how Amsterdam canals work. It's very difficult. It's much, much more difficult than self-driving cars. Anybody, any of you, who have never put a feet on a boat, as myself, you can go there and rent a boat and start driving. So we start doing all the data analysis of all the boat traffic in the city of Amsterdam to see where they go, when, and then we start designing some algorithms to find the best path for boats in different times of the day. So not only that they would be faster if they choose path 1 than path 2, but if they could try to avoid collision, because collision, as you can see here, is pretty, it's easy to happen, and it does happen. At the same time, we were also trying to test how people would react to autonomous boats. And in this case, again, we had some community engagement exercise. This was designed by Simone, by the way. And then it would help people to come up with their own ideas of how to use autonomous boats in the city. And then we also translated some of these ideas into virtual reality environments. So people could experience on virtual reality beforehand what would happen with their boats in the city. And we had an experiment testing people's reaction, stress level. We put some stress conductor in people's hands and fingers, and we have people using autonomous boats and using regular boats, the same boat. The only difference is that on one side we have a captain, on the other side we did not have a captain, and we measure the stress level to see how people in Amsterdam would react when they had autonomous boats in the city. So it was a pretty interesting exercise. We kept doing lots of design to imagine the future of Amsterdam canals using autonomous boats, but still, we had to have autonomous boats to show the city, look, MIT is doing data analysis, as you saw the boats there. We're doing robotics, we're developing autonomy on boats, we're doing design, but at some point we have to bring everything together in a single boat. Let's see what happens there. Oops.
This is Lucy.
Oops.
Lucy.
Can you make the sound louder now, please? Okay? Let's see.
This is Lucy. Lucy is a rowboat, a fully autonomous, zero-emission boat that operates on urban waterways, and she can change the way cities work. As congestion and emissions continue to rise, while cities continue to grow, the existing infrastructure of many cities struggles to keep up. Rowboats offer a solution by moving road traffic to the water. By bringing passengers from A to B, or as an on-demand boat, taking you anywhere you want. And they can also help the city as a multi-purpose workboat. Take Crystal. She is equipped to collect household waste to free the streets from heavy garbage trucks. Rowboats are fully autonomous, so they navigate without a skipper and can operate 24/7. In order to sail by themselves, rowboats need to perceive their environment and recognize objects such as bridge pillars, floating objects, and of course other vessels. The primary source of information comes from a LiDAR sensor, but rowboats are also equipped with cameras, GPS, and a digital compass. Rowboat's onboard computer combines and processes all of the data and runs the rowboat software so it can successfully complete its mission plan. After 5 years of development, testing and experimentation, we have now successfully enabled autonomy on the full-scale prototypes. Rowboat is ready for the next step. Join us and let's unlock the potential of urban waterways together.
And here comes the last lesson that you learn when you are working at MIT. We have to have real-world impact with the science that we do. So here we had designers, computer scientists, roboticists, engineers, everybody worked together to come up with these autonomous boats. Once we have delivered the boats to the city, what's next? The next is that a subgroup of us created a startup called a Rowboat, and they had, okay, now you have a startup, you have to find business, right? And currently, we have the Rowboat technology deployed on 2 ferries in Amsterdam that cross the main river in the city. And next year, in July, you're going to see Rowboat on television because Rowboat has been selected to transport athletes in the Paris Olympic Games. So I think this is how a strong science can be when we try to do things very comprehensively with a real-world impact in mind. So this is what we do at the lab, and I thank you very much. I don't know if you have time for questions, but I'm happy to ask questions, or we can do the questions after Simone presents. Thank you.